And you've got minutes from the meeting from April 27th. If you review them, I need a motion to accept them or amend them.
Good to me. I move that we accept the minutes. I'll second them.
Okay. Any discussion on the motion? None? Those in favor of accepting the minutes? Anybody opposed? Charlie?
No,
No, okay. Thank you. The discussion on the ADUs, that legislation has been passed, the 2003, and I've been in touch with MMA concerning this, and they responded back, and essentially the legal services staff said the new law, and they gave a bunch of qualifications, is not in effect yet. It will not go into effect until 90 days after the current legislative session has ended, which has not occurred. The legislation was still in progress.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, when this was sent. In addition, many of the requirements in the law do not become effective until 2023. And when I was reading the law, it's, I believe it's July of 2000, it's July 1 of 2023. And I gotta admit, I won't labor it, but just reading the law, I can read it and I know what it says. I just don't know what it all means.
Yep.
So as far as doing anything on the ADUs, I'll ask for people's comments, and if you have them, fine. If you don't, we'll move on to essentially the other items that we covered in the previous meetings that need to go to public hearing. But essentially, the ADUs can be internal to a single-family residence. It can be attached by a wall to a residence, or it can stand alone. And that's about it. As far as the requirements, I'm not really sure what the law reads. I know what it says. Like I said, I don't know what it means per se. It's a little bit ambiguous, but in my opinion, an ADU in this community should comply with the site requirements that we now have in effect for developments in the different zones. Setbacks of X number of feet, coverage. Hi, Heidi.
Sorry, Mike.
That you're here, it's appreciated. I'm
One
serious
board
when I
meeting
say
from
that.
the other. Yeah.
Those are the minutes, and they were approved. Did you have any, because I sent them out by email, did you have anything that you saw in the message that you said, we didn't do that, that's not right? No?
No.
But I personally think that an ADU should comply with the town's regulations. I don't think our regulations are onerous. You know, percentage lot coverage, setback requirements, height of the building, things of that nature. And we revised some of those criteria in the past two meetings. From April, the meeting of April 12th, and this past meeting on the 27th. So there are different criteria.
Is there anything in the MRSA, some parts that stipulate that you cannot have your water or sewer connected to the existing building?
That's the part, and other parts that I know what it says, I don't know what it means. It's just, to me, it's ambiguous.
Well,
I can't imagine it doesn't.
the conference I went to in Caribou, Tuesday and Wednesday, that was one of the ones that came up that during the ADUs and tiny homes, they had to have their own sources of water and wastewater. They couldn't be tied to an existing building or an existing septic.
Mhm. So they have to stand alone.
They have to stand alone.
Yeah. I know, and I'm pretty sure that came up maybe by you at a previous meeting, probably the 27th of April,
Yeah,
about something dovetailing into an existing sewer system and
Yep.
so forth. Even if it's a sewer system. But if it's got its own leach field,
yeah.
then just jeopardizing two. Plus the leach field might not be sufficient for the additional.
As far as town service goes, I mean, you're essentially doubling that person's water bill and wastewater bill,
Mhm.
you know, if it goes through them. So that's a huge conflict of interest in itself, but and then it's gonna be a mess forever.
Well, there's supposed to be, from what I heard last night at this training session, Brianna Gearson is supposed to be contacting people after they get more information about what's going to be handed down by the state for conditions, regulations around these tiny houses. And it's going to be clarified at a higher level so that the attorneys that are involved from MMA are going to guide us in trying to make sure that we have the right guidelines on this. But it is coming down the pike. So I don't think that any decisions will be made without the attorneys looking at them and having a uniform understanding of what each town is expected to do and how it's supposed to be done. And then I think we just have to follow suit, you know.
But is this based on accessory dwelling unit, or is this just a tiny?
I think it will have all the stats on what we're supposed to do on these properties for the tiny houses. I think there'll be stipulations on what has to exist and what, you know, distance from the road, the whole thing. I think it'll be, you know, it'll be clear cut, just like, I mean, there must be some guidelines for the trailer parks that were in existence prior to, right? It had to be so many feet from the road. It had to have its own water systems, its own heating systems, its own this, its own that, right? Sewer systems. So whatever they decide for whatever they're coming up with for solutions for housing, I would expect that they're just going to tell us,
Well,
and we have to adopt it.
well.
But it's going
a
through at
state
least
regulation.
the MMA association so that we make sure it aligns with the statutes. And that's what they talked about greatly last night, is making sure that you understand what the statutes are and that they're in alignment with what the town is, with what they're doing.
Well, we'll see what happens. In the law, that, at least what I read, and it was dated 27th of April. So I thought, well, this must be the revised document, April 27th, 2022. And there's parts of this that are, when I read the comprehensive plan that this town worked on, or someone worked on, I don't know who was on that committee. I don't know if there was a committee. There was something.
I know Pete Pickles was involved in
Pete,
it. Yeah, old Pete Pickles, yeah. He
well,
was the town engineer at the time.
okay. Well, all I know is that there's a section in that document that lists the new development and probably other parts of the community as what's the term? Development zone or something like that. And I wrote Rick and Gotti when he was CEO, and I said, "What's this development zone? You know, in the new development or in R1 zones?" I said, "These have all been." Of course, it was just standalone comment. You know, there was no ADU regulations and so forth being proposed that I was aware of. And I said, well, what's this development zone stuff? And they got them right in residential settings. I said, there's no development zone established for the mill site or the airport development zone or for the RD zone. I said, those are areas that have potential for development. Well, you read this bill, and it makes mention about municipalities that have established development zones. And you can have actually 4 ADU units that could fit on a property.
That can't be right.
Well,
I
that's
mean,
what I'm
if it's
saying.
right, I mean, there's,
That's what I'm
if
saying.
it's right.
I know what it
we
says.
need to
I
have a
just don't
different
know what it
ordinance than
means.
that.
Right. But like I said, the regulations indicate that July 1 of 2023 is when this goes into effect. But as far as the law going into effect, 90 days according to the MMA, 90 days after the,
Passed it,
you know,
yeah.
so that would be sometime in July. Because I think they close shop the end of April.
Yeah.
Yeah, Charlie.
I just need a little bit of clarification. The meeting you're talking about last night, was that the MMA?
That was
meeting?
the MMA training from the 2 lawyers that were involved. One of them talked about the appeals process, and he was second half. Actually, Richard and Gotti was there. I sat with them. And the first one talked about the approvals and how to do a hardship variance, decision-making process, conditions of approvals, notice of decision, reconsideration, appeals process for the initial appeals, and then how it goes up from there. And he told me he's now on the appeals board, and I didn't know we had an appeals board. I'm like,
Oh, yeah.
okay. So I didn't even realize that there was a third entity that we were looking at here, but and then it goes up to Supreme Court if it still doesn't apply. But a lot of this, again, they just talked about going back to the statutes and going back to the simplicity of what they're requesting for their application and just matching it with what we've already got, ordinances and all of that. And just with any questions, they said we could call them at any time, and that's in here for the calls that we can call them on. But with what's coming down the pike, they don't have any answers. They wouldn't answer anything. And she said, let us get what the final decisions are on these tiny houses or development resources of each of these areas, and then we'll pass the information down as to how it has to happen.
Well, that was my request to them. And can you give us any guidance
Yeah,
on, how to, deal with this as we go forward?
no, we can look. I mean, I can make you a copy of it. It was just, that's the whole outline of the training.
Really? Yeah.
Mhm.
Now, the other thing I wanted to get clarified was when you were talking about the comprehensive plan, you're talking about, I think they did a regional one in the last
Yeah.
couple of years. Is that what you were talking
Yeah.
about?
That one that's from Millinocket, East Millinocket, and Medway. And the planning board reviewed chapter 14 on that at Dr. Padilla's request.
Yeah.
And I sent our comments to her, and I don't think anything was adopted. I wrote Peter on this regard. I told him that I read through the comprehensive plan. A lot of it is boilerplate stuff, but there's parts of it that are applicable to the state, which I took issue with. Why should the state have any say in the town's comprehensive plan? There's regulations, and we do comply with them, but that they would have their own wish list.
No. And one of both these kids, this from me, the legislation was adopted by the legislature. Has the governor signed it?
The way for 2023, the way I understand it, it was signed.
It was signed.
That's the way I understand it. Again, I might be giving bad information.
No, that's the way I understood it too.
I don't think we reviewed that last night. I wouldn't know otherwise, so.
Well, this ADU stuff, I mean, the ink isn't even dry. It's, well, when I was asking questions, I sent the Legal Services Department got back to me on May 3rd. So I sent comments to, Lori Ellis at MMA and, I don't have the date, but essentially, saying, what can you do to give us some guidance on criteria? Because the town council has asked the planning board, to give feedback on these ADUs. And I've already said it, I won't repeat too much of it, except when I looked into it, there is nothing on ADUs. It's all in litigation, not litigation,
Right.
but legislation.
Legislation.
I said, I couldn't go to another town and see, whoa, this is what they did. But
No, because it's all gonna change, I think. I think that it's coming down, but until a decision can't be made, until they do their thing, until they make the determination of what each of us has to accommodate each
Yeah,
town.
they were very early in this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, already in effect the 90 days and then.
yeah, so
No,
essentially,
we got time. We just gotta wait.
yeah, so essentially,
See what
90
develops.
days would be at least July 27th of this year, just that the law would take effect. Assuming that the date on this document.
How long does it take us to change an ordinance?
Well, we were dealing with it,
No, I realize that, but I mean, if we made a decision after we got everything back from them and we didn't think, say, one part of it might not have been stringent enough, or could be less stringent. I don't think it can be less. I think it has to be more. Has to be more or equal to what the state
yeah.
legislature or federal legislature has stated. But if we were to do something, how long would it take it for it to go into effect?
Well, essentially, we're doing something now, and at the end of this meeting or towards the end of this meeting, I was going to ask for feedback on holding the public hearing on the criteria that we reviewed in the past two meetings on parameters or criteria for sites, percentage of lots, things of that nature. What could be done in a zone, for this type of development, or that type of development. Those are things that we reviewed. And
Mhm.
essentially, they're going to go to a public hearing. It's got to be we put it in the paper for 2 weeks in a row, but it doesn't have to be. But the way the criteria is in a public paper, being that we have a town paper that comes out weekly, is that we have to have it in about 2 weeks ahead. And then, so we put it in again the following week, even though we don't require that. We are not required to do that. But I just figured, just to remind the public, hey, don't forget that this is coming up, because by the time you get that second paper on a Thursday, we typically have our meeting relative to whatever was set up in the notice the following Tuesday or Wednesday. So to give them the first notice on Thursday is not much. So it's the previous week that gives the first notice, and we give the second notice just to make sure that the public didn't miss it in the first place. And then, I'm sorry, I'll stop talking. And then it goes to the town council. Well, a letter will be sent to the town council saying, this is what we discussed as a board, and this is the feedback we got from the public concerning these different things, if we got any feedback whatsoever. And this is what we recommend going forward, and then it's in their hands. And then they have 2 public hearings. So that alone is gonna take a month, just for them.
Okay.
And I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. I have a couple of things that I would like to see whether or not it's me micromanaging or whether or not it's something that we could possibly gather information and data on. Number one, I don't think we ever came to a conclusion on the Airbnbs of how many people actually have Airbnbs in this town, where they're located and who owns them. To have an understanding of where those were. I would also, I've asked the town before to have a list of landlords, how many apartment buildings that we actually have for rent. And what is the need in this town per capita for our population? And I think we could get some statistics from the general assistance program. I think we could get some assistance, maybe even from putting a public notice out of who actually is looking for apartment rentals right now within our town, within our structure, and maybe East Millinocket and maybe Medway, to determine what we are looking at for expansion, because one of the issues here that I'm hearing from various groups that I'm in, like Penobscot Cares, and the Bangor Housing Department, who has talked to me several times because I want to continue to expand sober apartment buildings. And so my goal is to be able to put people that are going to maintain sobriety into their own apartment, doing their own thing, but maintaining sobriety, and continuing to have our support in a sober community. In doing that, he wants to bring the homeless here with tiny houses. And he wants to be able to, wherever tiny houses or this or that or the other thing is going to go, he wants to create homes for people. And so if we don't know what we already have going and who's doing it and what's going on, then we really don't know what we need, especially if we have other industry coming into town, of how many houses we do need and what type of housing we want. We are a planning board, and my thought is, we need some figures, we need some statistics, we need some understanding of who are the major landlords in this area. Are there more buildings that could be made into apartment buildings that are sitting either about to be in foreclosure or could be renovated, or, you know, what we have to work with the existing buildings in this town, to be able to make proposals to the town council about what can happen and how it can happen. Because if we just say, okay, let's get a bunch of tiny houses, my fear is that we're going to add a whole new population of individuals with issues that we can't manage because we don't have the agencies to deal with what they're dealing with in Bangor with substance use disorder and mental health issues. And
I think I
how do we
know that
structure this?
a lot of help that we could get is from DHHS too.
With the
because-
stats and
Yeah,
the census
yeah,
stuff?
and I can contact them and try to get that if you like.
I just think it
And,
makes sense for us to know the big picture
Yeah.
of what we have in this area, even if we branch out to East Millinocket, ask them, and Medway to ask them. So that we can also, because when I lived in Mechanic Falls, which is a small town, I would go and they would have a list of landlords posted in the town office. They would have a list of daycares posted in the town office, people that you could call to look for rents. They didn't have a whole lot, just like anybody else in a small town, but they at least had the players on there. And then if we talked to the town council and we said, what other buildings here could be developed or maybe purchased if we were all going to combine efforts within our own infrastructure and purchase some of these buildings that the out of town people have purchased and try to take back some of these large buildings that we could then make into housing and housing for families that are coming in working or maintaining sobriety or going to sustain the town and not drain the town, you know, so that's my thought.
Getting housing grants would be a great thing too, but
Yeah,
you gotta get somebody to do your grants for you.
yeah,
But yeah, that is big, but I know that DHHS, I deal with them through subsurface wastewater disposal issues, but I do know that I may be about to get the Red Cross involved in a building in Medway with displaced renters. that shouldn't have to be replaced. Not replaced, but,
Mhm,
you know, sent out of their homes.
right,
But
people that are
when
local,
I spoke to them, they told me the amount of need in this area for housing that people keep calling the state.
we need to have
and-
those figures.
And she said it's alarming, so I can call them and see if I can get that information, Heidi.
And if we're gonna
and,
put together any kind of grants, I need the stats. I mean, I'm not a
Yeah.
grant writer, believe me, but I'm gonna take a grant writing course this summer because this is where it all goes down to is if we're gonna start knocking on some doors and asking for housing, we have to have the statistics. This is our population. This is our population of elderly. This is our population of working class.
Yeah, I was gonna say, you're gonna have to.
We're gonna have to break it down and we're gonna have to show them, how we can generate family infrastructure back in and working class back again into Millinocket with a plan.
Part of the problem is probably half the buildings in town, people are not going to say that they have a rent in them because it's against their deed or it's against the town's ordinances. So they're not going to say that they have rents in them.
Can we,
And until we change that one particular issue, you're not going to get a realistic
I
view
thought you
of
couldn't
the
do that.
housing.
I thought it was illegal to do that.
to do what, to change it?
If you have an apartment building and you're renting, then you're not supposed to have the chance or the choice to discriminate against.
No, you can't discriminate.
No, against other.
No, what I'm saying is half the homes in this town are under the old deeds, the old Great Northern deeds
Yeah,
that
yeah.
state that they cannot
Right.
rent any part of that property.
Okay, I see what you're saying.
So
So,
if that's
so
lifted-
nobody that owns any of those houses is then down to the town office and say that I have a rent available. They're not gonna say it. Even if they've already converted their basement into a nice home, they're not gonna tell you. They're not gonna tell that.
Well, can we have a moratorium of such that we just lift the ordinance for a period of time to get a realistic view of how many apartment buildings that have been grandfathered in under this? So that we get a realistic analysis. I mean, I know that there's houses in the new development that have been rented. My ex being one of them is that house up there is being rented right now. I know it. So how many more up there, but how many others in this town are being rented by people that we're unaware of? I don't know. I think we have just to try to get these stats as best as we can. Because there's always going to be, like I have this place down 19 Central Street and I just had one person leave who can't do construction. And so had him leave and now I've already got this filled and I haven't advertised at all. I know the girl that graduated 2 months ago and it's wonderful. She's coming back, and I'm really excited, but I don't have to advertise. So it's kind of word of mouth of who you know, because somebody needs a place to stay. So,
Well, as far as this board, I don't think we're gonna solve anything. No one appointed us in that regard. The town council, though, does have responsibilities here. And I was looking at my notes. I sent a memo to Peter on March 31st, essentially as a result of a meeting that we had, the planning board had on March 29th, doesn't much matter, it was just prior. And I said that essentially, the town should determine the number of residential properties available for ownership or rent in the community. The board did not believe this information is currently known. Another point, the town should determine the number and location of short-term rental properties in the community and determine the interest of owners to consider long-term rental of their property. The third point was the town should meet with operators of transient facilities, hotels, motels, etc., to determine if long-term lodging is an option at their facility. And I sent that to them because essentially in our discussions, it was obvious from the discussions that things were at a, tenuous point as far as residential use, because so much has gone to short-term rentals and others essentially are, well, whether people know about them being rental properties or not, we're not gonna find out about it, but the town would wanna find out about it, I would think.
Some of the Airbnbs the town have got to know. I mean,
Well,
if they come in and got their permits to renovate the thing
Here's your catch.
and,
If
and done
they
that.
came in and got their permit.
oh,
Yeah.
well,
And that was Richard's point too, is that
No,
they don't have
everybody-
addresses, they don't have names of these people. If there's a fire or something, that was Tom's issue, there's a fire or something, they can't even get a hold of anybody. And one time they were trying to get somebody overseas, like in France or something, to notify some guy that owned a property here that, there was an issue with a violation or something and couldn't get a hold of a live body.
We have a house right now that I'm trying to work on that is a junkyard. And the owner, last we knew, was in Florida under some trust company. You don't even know who owns the place. You can't even find a person to talk to say, hey, this property you own up here, you might be renting to somebody up here, but you know what's going on. It's a junkyard. We can't even get a hold of anybody. There's no phone number, there's no.
yeah, I know Rick, when he was in your position there, mentioned about the short-term rentals, and Tom mentioned about short-term rentals because of first responder situations.
That is information that the town, especially fire and safety, need to know.
Yeah,
If something happens, they need
Yeah.
contact information.
and the property up on Highland Avenue has been discussed at least on 2 occasions that I'm aware of, after the town property across the road of Highland Avenue,
It's rutted up, torn up.
was damaged quite significantly. Yeah, and that might have been the thing that Heidi was mentioning, because Rick said that he was trying to find out the person, and it was someone outside of the country.
Yeah, that was. And I don't think we got a final determination off of that as to them having to register, because the people that came in on that were mostly from out of town, and it was a Zoom meeting, and they were irate that they didn't want to have to let people know. It was a violation of their privacy, and they didn't have to let people, and they weren't going to be charged to
If
be
I
able
owned a
to,
property
or taxed.
and I was renting it and it burned down, I'd want to know.
If you're a multimillionaire and you just came in to buy up all these places and sit on them until they become,
I still want to know.
a value.
Either insurance company needs to be contacted or something. I would think that as a property owner, I'd want to know what's going on with my property.
Well, we got 2 things working in our favor right now. There's no reason, Tommy legally should be able to stop by a residence that is being renovated and to see if it's even up to code. I don't think he needs permission from the owner to do that if they're constructing, because you could have a certificate of occupancy to even let people rent,
Right.
and then you got you,
Right.
we've got you, that should be able to have that very same right.
If I can't contact a property owner, I can go to that property. The only reason I can enter that property is to look for said property owner. And if they deny me being there, then I need to leave. The only way I can go to a property is if they allow me to. I have to get their permission.
What if you walked into it under construction while the contractor's renovating.
I can, but it is only to seek out property owner in order to get their permission to do an inspection.
So you can't stop a violation if you see one in progress?
In progress, I can, but then I still have to contact the property owner.
That's okay.
But if I'm there in the first place, because I can't find the property owner, if I'm there on that property trying, you know what I mean? It's
I know, but you can shut them down.
But
And that's a good way to get a hold of them, because the minute you shut them down, they're not doing the work that they're supposed to be getting paid to do. And they're not making the progress that they need to make in order to,
assuming they
To
shut
do it.
down, assuming they don't leave, and they go and do whatever the hell they want anyway.
Wow.
I mean, I'm just, anything can happen. I mean, it's just, I find that, I find the attitude around here is that I'm gonna do it my way.
yeah, but you know
I'm not
something,
saying that's how it should be, but I'm just, that's what I'm running into.
you're gonna be doing the same thing I did. You're gonna end up taking an oath. And that's what you're gonna go by, is what that oath
Absolutely.
states.
Yep.
And I've already been called up by several people on doing what I'm doing, and you know something, I still go to sleep at night. I don't care.
Okay,
I really don't, but you're not in that position to care or make friends. But I understand what you're saying as far as the
what I'm
property
saying
owner,
is legally,
but
in my training, when it comes down to having permission to be on someone's property, you need to have permission to be on their property. You know, if you can be on their property, trying to find that person to get permission. That's what it comes down to.
see on my
You
end,
have
as
to
long as
have
there's a
permission.
violation in progress or one that's been done, I can legally enter. I just have to show my credentials. And I can legally enter.
So what credentials would that gives you that legal right?
What gives me the legal right to do that? If I happen to see a violation, then the oath that I took for, let's say, for an LPI, and I can tell, say, by the outside of the foundation that the pipe that extrudes from the house is supposed to tie into the whether town water
I say
or,
go by, you're not gonna see much
But-
internal.
well, you don't have
You're
to. If you
limited.
see something like that on the external of it, then that gives you the right to stop and enter that property and ask,
And ask.
and you can ask,
Yep.
but it still gives you that right to enter that property. And if they don't, I have to go contact the sheriff's department. Well, I take that back. Sheriff's department's the second one. I have to contact the state first. And then the state will notify them to let me in, do what I have to do.
Right.
And then usually you take a sheriff's office with sheriff's deputy with
Right.
you to go in and do it, but I know we're getting off what we're
But
supposed to be
therefore, you
doing,
need
but
permission, and that's what you're running into with any of the stuff you're talking about. You need that permission.
Well, let's get back on the agenda. This got not off on a tangent, it's all relevant,
No,
but the
no.
ADUs is the subject that we were
Yeah.
asked to investigate, and essentially it's still in a state of flux.
Yeah,
Okay,
it seems like it's just running in circles.
well, I
Was there,
think, I'm sorry.
excuse me. Was there something, I just seem to remember hearing this while we were having this discussion over the weeks. And it seems to me I heard something about we wouldn't be able to change ordinances or make adjustments to ordinances while this law is pending. So it almost has this conversation being irrelevant.
Well, yes and no, Charlie. My personal opinion, we should, as a community, move on something that we have oversight of, which is the zoning ordinance in this town. Now, this regulation, 2003, has got some aspects that are gonna affect us. Not the planning board, but the community. And essentially, the town will just have to comply with it. If it says that you can't require that they have off-street parking, and it says in our ordinance, it's required, well, it's required. But if the state said you can't do it, that's it. We can't do it. We don't have to change our ordinance because of that. But the changes that we did recommend in April 18th, April 12th, and the 27th are changes that we can address issues dealing with residential uses in this town that we have oversight on the zoning ordinance. And if we just say, nope, everything is in a state of flux with this ADU stuff, and we just sit around till July 1, 2023, I don't recommend that. I'd say we should move forward.
Prepare for it.
Right, we should move forward, and if it fits together with the regulations that are stated, where you have to do this, you have to do that, well, we'll just have to do it as a community. That doesn't mean we have to change the zoning ordinance right off to make it happen. The state says it will, you will comply. That's it.
You don't think our ordinance should comply with the state requirement?
I'm not saying that it shouldn't comply. What I'm saying is that it's in a state of flux, this
Well, I know
ADU
that.
stuff.
When it comes down, you're saying we don't have to change our ordinance?
If I,
I would think that we would accommodate so that we have a zoning ordinance that reflects requirements in not only our community, but obviously with this ADU stuff,
Yeah.
it's gonna be
well, I
across
think
the
we
board.
if parts of our rules or ordinances, if they're more stringent, then they go with the more stringent one. If it's just more stringent than the state, then we go with ours.
Well, I
Or we
think,
look at them, right? Or we
Well,
look at them
We
and
look at them.
Make recommendations moving
But typically,
when
they like
I,
to see us use the more stringent one.
well, when I read this regulation that was passed, that I think I'm reading the one that was passed, it's not so much the town having something more stringent. The town can have something more liberal, and they're allowed, the town is allowed to do it. But if the town says you have to have off-street parking, which we do,
Mhm.
and this set of law or rules say you can't enforce that, it's gonna cause problems, but we just don't have any options. It's gonna be. The state says this is the way it's gonna be, assuming that that's the way
Yeah.
it is gonna be. And what our zoning ordinance says, moot. But what I'd like to do is to go over what we discussed as a planning board on April 12th and April 27th, just to say, this is what we said. And if anybody's got any second thoughts and want to talk about it, that's the reason.
Yeah.
Because after this meeting, we're going to set a date to have a public hearing. So if we can move forward in that regard.
Yes, yes.
On April 12th, we reviewed essentially the matrix of what facilities and uses were allowed in certain zones. In the R1, HC, and NC, R1, HC is highway commercial, NC is neighborhood commercial. The residential use in those zones is essentially not restricted. And as the board met on April 12th, we didn't do anything in those zones because there are no limitations, but the other zones are. In the R2 zone, the board approved single-family mobile homes. That wasn't allowed previously. And multi-family dwellings of 3 or more families, including apartments and grouped houses. They were not allowed in the R2 zone. That would be the new development in Morgan Lane area. The board did not approve a mobile home park or row houses in that zone. As I'm doing this, if I'm
Yes.
saying, okay, all right,
I,
just jump in.
yeah,
Go ahead, Mike.
no, yes, you're right. That's what we agreed upon.
All right. In the RD zone, the board approved 2-family dwelling duplex units and multifamily dwellings for 3 or more families, including apartments and group houses and mobile home parks. That's in the RD zone. And the reason we were so, I say liberal, is because that area, RD zones, are the least developed in the community, and the options of doing something are more, I would just say,
Yep.
possible than trying to squeeze something in an area that's pretty well structured with certain housing units, and no lots to speak of to put something on. In the DC zone, the board did not approve mobile home parks. We discussed that essentially in the matrix of the zoning ordinance, mobile home parks are not allowed in the downtown zone. And we've decided we're not gonna go there because there is no place to
Leave
put
it
a
alone.
mobile home park in the downtown
We
zone.
decided to leave it alone.
And the downtown zone was requested that it stay
Yep.
for resident, retail purposes, business purposes. So that was the decision. In that meeting, those were the points that were agreed upon based on what's allowed in these different zones for residential uses. And on April 27th, we focused in more on specifics dealing with the lot size, coverage, building height, things of that nature, setback requirements. And I'd like to go through them as we review them. In the R1 zone, maximum building height of a principal structure was increased from 40 feet to 50 feet.
Correct.
In the R2 zone, maximum lot coverage was increased from 25% to 30%, and maximum building height of a principal structure was increased from 30 feet to 40 feet.
Correct.
In the RD zone, rural development zone, maximum lot coverage increased from 20% to 30%, and maximum building height of a principal structure was increased from 30 feet to 50 feet.
That is also.
Okay. In the downtown zone, downtown commercial zone, maximum building height of a principal structure increased from 40 feet to 50 feet. Okay. In the highway commercial zone, minimum road shore frontage decreased from 200 feet to 150 feet. The requirement that's now in place is 200 feet of road frontage. It's also shoreline, but we don't have that. But we propose that it be reduced to 150 feet.
We did. We
Okay.
did. Yep.
And it
the
says,
height,
and maximum building height of a principal structure was increased from 30 feet to 50 feet.
40 feet.
40 to
50 feet.
From 40 feet?
From
From 40 to 50.
Oh, okay. I apologize there. Got it wrong. 30. That's in the RD zone.
Oh, that's right, in a minute. That's right.
Okay, it's right in the minutes, but when Tony wrote this, this is, I format the meeting so that
Yeah.
I could try to remember to do things.
All right,
Okay. In the downtown zone, maximum building height of a principal structure was increased from 40 feet to 50 feet.
Correct.
Okay.
fine, yes.
In the highway zone, highway commercial zone, minimum road shore frontage decreased. Am I repeating myself here?
Yeah, that one you did, yeah.
Okay,
So we're in the NZ.
okay. In the neighborhood commercial zone, maximum building height of a principal structure was increased from 30 feet to 40 feet.
Correct.
Okay. Those are the changes that I say approved, we thought were
On the 27th.
on the 27th, and the previous one was on April 12th.
That's correct.
Okay.
Why did I-
No,
I
speak up.
had reducing the lot size on the NC.
We talked about that, and when I speaking to Evan, because I was at a loss on what we decided, because it seemed like it was kind of discussed but not acted upon. Speak what you think, what
Well,
happened.
I just wrote, I had written down, we went from 7,500 to 5,000,
That's right.
same as the DC.
Yeah, I put
Yes.
that down too, yeah.
Okay, thank you. So essentially, the neighborhood commercial zone, maximum building height of a principal structure was increased from 30 to 40 feet, and lot size was reduced from 7,500 square feet to 5,000 square feet. And we didn't amend the minutes, but essentially they'll be amended when I write these minutes up. It'll be after the fact, obviously, but at least, you know, it'll be indicated that we discussed this at the April 27th meeting, the lot size being reduced from 7,500 square feet to 5,000 square feet. But those are the points that we agreed
Yeah.
to.
Yeah.
All right. The thing I want to go now is pick a date for a public hearing. Because we're gonna have to put it in, not have to, it'll go in the paper twice.
Yeah.
But the thing is, things happening this week are already a done deal, correct, Evan?
Yep.
Yeah, so essentially, the paper's coming out the 12th tomorrow. Okay, so nothing's gonna happen. To make something happen for the paper coming out on the 19th, that's a possibility as far as the paper coming out.
Right.
But the date that would be set would be at least 2
Weeks
weeks,
after that.
2 weeks beyond that. So essentially, if we go there, I'll be quite candid and say that it's gonna catch me by the short hairs. Because it's right after Memorial Day weekend,
Yeah.
and I'm coming back from the grandchildren, and it's something I would like to avoid.
Absolutely.
Only because, not for my sake per se, but it is, but it's gotta catch probably some other people by the short hairs. It's just
You
I
know,
don't
another
wanna be-
week's not gonna hurt anything.
Second
Well,
week in June.
that's-
The first.
okay. All right, so
Take it
the
first.
next time, no, go ahead. Please.
No, we were just thinking it would take us into the first week of June.
Actually, it would be
Second week.
the second week in June.
Second week.
The first week in June
This is first week
cuts
back.
cuts
Oh, that's right, to the next
midweek. because June 1st is a Wednesday.
Yeah,
I'm just looking.
Yeah, okay.
And,
well, there you go.
All right, so essentially, the date of the meeting would be that week, and we've been meeting on Wednesdays. That's still an option. And I personally would not advocate us meeting during the workday, only because of people trying to attend the meeting might not be able to do that.
right, you get criticized.
So is Wednesday, the 8th at 6:30 an option?
Sounds like it to me.
June
June 8th is, we're talking about a public meeting.
A public, yes, public hearing. I mean, a meeting go open to the public, but this is gonna be in the newspaper.
Can we discuss what we're going to be discussing at that meeting?
We just
8th.
did.
Just did.
This is what we're,
This page,
well,
Well-
essentially,
essentially what is.
What we
yeah,
did.
but I
For
mean,
those two meetings,
what-
27th and.
what I'll do
17th.
for that meeting is to have these points summarized, not maybe any different than what they are right now. So when the public comes in, they can pick up a sheet of paper that says, this is what we're gonna be discussing. Hopefully, there's gonna be some exposure in this regard, that the public might get more heads up about it. But it's gonna be in the newspaper.
So it's gonna be advertised similar to this.
I don't know that we're gonna get that much. I just
Well,
don't,
that's
The
a question.
format's gonna be reduced probably.
I'm sorry.
The format might be reduced a little bit to fit in the paper, but I mean.
Well, I'll talk to Diana to see, but I mean, to put in quite a list, it might not be possible. But if it is, that would be beneficial, because then the public would see the date of the public hearing, changes to the zoning ordinance in these respects. And that would be good. Because I'm sure nobody comes in and
There'll
picks
be a
up our
bunch of
zoning
confusion
ordinance,
with that.
yeah, and reads
With that hearing.
There would be a lot of confusion if we were to list all this. But there'd be even more confusion if we listed nothing and opened up
Well,
the conversation to any subject.
oh, I don't want to open up to
Oh.
any subject.
Exactly.
I want us to be focused at the public hearing, though things will go off on a tangent, the way we go off on a tangent. But it's only one public hearing. And so I want to make sure that the people that want to speak to the particular criteria do have an opportunity to say, I don't like the idea of whatever.
I don't see anything here that's very controversial.
No,
I don't,
the ADUs might be the one that be the most heated maybe.
I'm still
Yeah,
not
and
gonna
we're
have
not gonna be
information on that.
going
Yeah,
there.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
No.
That would be the
Yeah.
one that would be,
not this meeting.
no.
No,
These very reasonable and small changes that I don't see. They even come, I don't think it'd be much of a meeting. You gotta do it, but
Well,
I don't see the
It
conversation.
might not be. We've had public hearings
Yeah.
that were quite brief,
Yes, we have.
you know,
And
because the public doesn't
Give a hoot.
take, well, they,
well, these aren't big. I don't see these,
Huge changes.
no, that are gonna affect the public.
well, things like building heights going from 30 feet to
Yeah.
40 feet, so forth. Is it gonna have a change?
Just over time, probably.
Yeah,
as-
it
as
makes a
things
point.
evolve.
It's, I mean, if we went from some 30 feet to 100 feet,
There you go.
well, now that,
Anyway,
especially
that
when that
conversation,
100-foot building sits on someone's adjacent property.
Yeah.
And say, what the,
I don't like those shadows.
yeah. So what we're dealing with here are adjustments, but they're not gonna,
That's,
they're not
that's right,
gonna,
they're adjustments,
people
they're not
out of the
changes.
water. All right, so June 8th, public hearing, and I would say 6:30. I know this is well in advance, Evan. Do you have any feel for getting into the courtroom?
Wednesday is usually court day, so by 6:30 it should be fine.
Oh, okay.
So,
Is the, okay. But the day is doable.
it
Okay.
should be.
All right.
I would like to make a little recommendation though, if we're gonna do this up there, or anywhere else. If we had an easel that we could put, you know, all the zones on so that people can look at them and understand what we're proposing and where. Or.
I'm pretty sure there's one up there.
Usually
But whether we have anything that actually, aside from unbolting that room from the wall,
Mhm.
I don't know if there's anything available to bring up there.
And we could probably do a few of these maybe.
It's like, yeah, we could probably print more of those if we need to.
If we had a projector, we could make this as big as we need to, right?
Yeah, yeah.
I know there's a projector in the manager's office, but I honestly have never used it. I know they use it for the council meetings. But I don't know.
That would be
I
perfect.
think the projector, I don't think it's, you put a sheet of paper on it. I
Why
think
not?
it projects the computer, but I don't know. I haven't messed with
Is
it.
it,
I'd have to ask Peter about it.
A few months ago, Ricky made us some copies of these. Bigger sizes. Maybe, anybody remember? getting those?
24 by 36.
Yeah, what the dimensions were.
but like what
There
I
must be
just
one or
mentioned,
two of them left
that
around the
if
office.
this can be projected onto the
Dig it.
wall,
It's not
That would be
impossible,
perfect.
but I have to
Yeah.
dig it.
That would be perfect. Yeah, she's had that was a great idea.
And even if we could color code it, that would even be better. I mean, if somebody can get
Just
me
highlighted the, yeah.
I could take one of these homes and have the girls do all the different zones and different light colors. So that we can say, R1 is green, whatever, so it's easier to
Yes,
just
that would be
visualize.
nice.
Stand out.
Yeah,
did you say, or did you think that the projector that Peter has,
The
is an opaque
projector-
projector?
The projector is probably smaller than this,
But
and it plugs into a laptop.
Oh, so it's a,
It's not
It's not
like a projector, and you have
Yeah,
like
yeah,
a
yeah,
big, with a big light, and you put the paper on it, projects whatever
Oh.
you put on the paper on the wall. It's not that kind of projector. Well, almost like a movie projector.
so essentially, that document, digital, would be projected on the wall.
Correct.
so do we have that somewhere in the laptop drive saved?
Well, if you took that and highlighted it like you wanted to, I
And
could
then
probably
scanned it,
scan it, and then
scanned
put
it
it on
in.
the computer, and then put it on the projector.
There we go.
If you
Yep.
wanted to do that.
I can do that. Yeah, and then we can
That
just
would be
make it
like-
bigger and bigger. Modern technology. I love it.
mm,
I agree, it would be nice if that was color coded, because it would just, it
Oh,
really
it'd make
pop
it-
as far as,
So much easier.
easy to identify the areas, yeah.
Mhm.
Well, it would be better in the sense that no one sitting in those pews are gonna be able to read
Yeah.
R1, R2, and
Mhm,
no matter what we project on the wall.
mhm.
So if something can be done, Heidi, and it might already be available, and maybe it's something that's,
Richard
say-
might know.
well, and God,
Mhm.
he's more knowledgeable than me on a lot of this tech stuff. 'Cause I am not savvy.
those maps I found on that laptop. I mean, that was his laptop.
Yeah.
I don't know all the information on it, but I've tried to find what I can.
Mhm.
I know he took had access to a lot of old files that he used for this, so.
Now, these color coded things right here, is that by the,
That is, I have no idea what that color coded, I don't think it's color coded at all, to be quite honest.
Being paper to the lower left.
That is
Yeah.
permit fees.
Oh,
paper to the left, Charlie, down at the
Yeah.
bottom?
On the bottom to the left.
yeah.
Is that got any rhyme or reason to district areas?
No.
Right
No.
here? Yeah, that, no.
No, I really don't, I haven't found any rhyme or reason to the colors. so.
Because if you can get me something like that Tony, with what the changes are going to be in the R zone or the whatever R1 zone, those kinds of things, and just break it down. I can color code it to what it is in here, and we can add that to whatever we're looking at. So
Well,
it's easier for people to look at.
Well, the changes, jump in, folks, the changes would be on a sheet of paper that the public would get as they come into the courtroom.
If they're there in person,
Well,
you get people on Zoom.
yeah, well, you make a good point. Who knows where we'll be June
Hmm.
8th? Yeah,
I'm just saying, if I could put a paper up like that and we were looking at something like that, then it'd be easy to say, oh, the yellow area, that's R1, or,
What they
And okay.
relate to.
and then it's gonna be from whatever, 7,500 to 5,000, whatever it is for the changes.
Mhm.
If we could have just a quick breakdown in those areas of what the changes are gonna be, I can color code those too. It'd be easy just to tie it in.
Okay,
Well,
we can
those
see
are
what's
right
possible.
minutes to the 12th and 27.
I'm sorry,
Those come right from the minutes of the
Yeah.
12th and 27 meeting.
except for my error,
Well, watch
Yeah.
it.
but
I want to
Yes,
get it right, man. I
those,
want to get it right.
those minutes, essentially, there was a lot more verbiage in the minutes. And what I try to do is just get it down to
Condense
the,
it.
the boilerplate stuff.
Mhm. Exactly.
All right, so I'll take care of the thing with Diana as far as getting a notice in the paper.
But anything in you want, and then you,
Well, I'll see what she'll,
What works
you know,
for you.
that's what you're gonna pay for, that's all.
yeah. I'll see if there's any,
What it comes down to. So,
yeah, because when we put in stuff in past, we weren't too elaborate.
Well, we don't
It
know.
wasn't cryptic. I mean,
I
people
don't
knew what
think
we
you
were
need-
doing.
You need all the detail either.
Well, I mean,
Sometimes the more
What's-
detail you have, the more it'll get glanced over.
Yep.
Yeah.
well,
They just want the basic information. sometimes, you know.
I'll bounce it off of Diana and see.
Good.
If
We're
it's
talking
just-
about condensing this. And that's, that's why I brought the subject up.
Well,
How will it
essentially,
be condensed?
what I'm reading from is when I put this together, this is the April 12th, and these are the 4 points that essentially April 12th, and then April 27th, and these are the points from April 27th. Like I said,
Yeah.
a lot of the verbiage in the
Right?
minutes have been,
Yeah.
reduced or minimized
Eliminated.
or taken out, just so that we don't have a lot of text. Just that the zone is gonna go from this to this. Gonna be 40 feet, now it's gonna be 50 feet building height. Gonna have 40% lot coverage, now it's gonna have 50% lot coverage, things of that nature. I'll do that, and it'll come out in that. If we have a meeting on the June 8th, it's got to come out.
Next week, Diana will send it.
It's got to go, it's got to be published June 2nd. That's a Thursday, and it's got to be published May 26th. That would be 2 weeks.
Yeah, it's not needed next week.
No, we wouldn't need it next week, but essentially,
Yep.
yeah. Well, this issue is coming out tomorrow.
That's right.
So essentially, the next issue coming out on the 19th won't have
Correct.
anything. The 26th will mention it, and the June 2nd will mention it. And then the meeting will be on June 8th, which
Yep.
is a Wednesday.
Diana will take care of it.
All right.
And are you going to be able to try to get information from the HHS so that we have more information on what we're really looking at?
Yep, I'm gonna do that before 10 a.m. tomorrow. Because I have to call the state anyway. And then after that, I'm heading to the church for the day of the turkey supper for tomorrow. So I'll
Right.
be up there cooking all day tomorrow.
I'll be up to see you.
There you go.
Very cool.
And, you know, I don't know if, does Rick Lax own that apartment building on Wausau Street?
He
Or is
does
it,
not.
he does not?
I've looked at it as a potential site, and he keeps telling me that the guy that owns it. So he may be a partner in it, but he is not sole owner in it.
I know that there's a lot of mold issue. I can remember that. But I don't know if it was just in the basement part or if it's gone through all the walls, interior walls or any of that.
I think it's more, well, when I looked at it last year, it's more in the basement.
Yeah.
But it's hard to get into because you don't have any stairs or anything. So hard to even get in the building.
Mm.
We went in the wintertime, so, and he was willing to, supposedly the guy that owns it, to do it to suit whatever I wanted. But he wanted to make sure that he got the rental money out of it. And I couldn't guarantee him that I could fill it and keep it filled. And so I was looking at whether I could sell it.
I don't think you're not problem keeping it federal.
Well, it's according to the type of clientele. Like, I don't want people in there that are using drugs and alcohol. That
No.
puts a whole different spin on things.
Yeah.
I'm very, very selective, and it's not going to be an easy town to try to continue to hold that code up.
It took me damn near a year to get an apartment this time.
Yeah. So I'm trying to change the whole dynamic of it. I mean, I was told today that Millinocket is a cesspool for drugs and alcohol, and that was a CPS worker making
Yeah.
that comment.
Yeah.
And I was like, wow.
We're
We're supposed to,
CPS. Everything.
Child Protective Services. Yeah, like they couldn't believe I had a recovery house here in Millinocket where it's just infiltrated. It is just, that's the way they look at Millinocket. It's crazy.
All right.
Yeah. Unfortunately.
I'll
Yeah.
send out a notice to all the members about this public hearing date and time. And as far as anything else, you'll find out about it. I mean, essentially, the agenda is a public hearing. But I'll get the information to you regarding this.
No, I want to.
What I need now, unless there's other discussion.
I
motion.
make a motion to adjourn.
Okay.
I second it.
Mike, and I've got 7:46.
Evan, can I ask you a question real quick? That highlighted piece of paper right there, has that been updated? Those fees?
Yep.
Okay. Perfect.
Yeah, that one should be right.
I know the fees changed about a year ago, so
They did.
I'm assuming that there's no opposition to adjourning. I didn't take a vote. Okay, thank you.
Did you?
I haven't had dinner yet. Yeah, let's go.
And thank you very much, and thank you, Evan, for being